You're listening to episode 46 of A Whole New You podcast. Dr. Brianne Grogan joins us on today's show to discuss pelvic floor health. We talk about pelvic floor issues like prolapse, bladder leakage, and diastasis recti, but we also discuss why having a strong pelvic floor is essential for us all, especially as we age. Dr. Brie's popular YouTube channel is a panacea for all things pelvic floor. And on it, she shares videos on exercise mechanics, proper lifting, women's anatomy and health, and even nutrition. If you have a pelvic floor, you need to listen to this episode. It may honestly just change your life and help prevent debilitating conditions. Welcome to A Whole New You podcast. I'm your co-host, Kim Maravich. I'm a registered nurse and author of the book 360 Health. I'm joined by my dear friend, Lori Biddle, a health and wellness coach certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Our show exists to inspire and empower women to take charge of their health with weekly tips and conversation about self-care, mindset, nutrition, fitness, and clean living. Please keep in mind that the material provided in this podcast is intended as general information only and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We're thrilled to have you here. Let's get to the show. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I am pleased to have Dr. Brianne Grogan joining me on the show. With over 9 million views on YouTube, articles featured on MindBodyGreen, and a 5-star reviewed book, Dr. Brianne Grogan, PT, DPT, is a respected voice in the field of women's health and wellness. She describes her YouTube channel as the home of core and pelvic floor friendly fitness and is loved by her viewers for her down-to-earth, compassionate approach. Dr. Bree, so nice to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And I have to say this, not for vanity, I promise, but just to I don't know, be excited. I actually just surpassed 10 million views on YouTube just the other day, just yesterday. Yeah, so
That's
exciting. That
is
information.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool to know that the information about even just pelvic health awareness is getting out to that many people. Even if they only watch my stuff one time, at least they've thought about pelvic health.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure that, you have such an inviting presence and you have such a variety of things on your channel that we're going to get to. I'm sure that people are definitely watching at least more than one video.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's that is where I found Dr. Bree is on her YouTube channel, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and also what got you interested in becoming a pelvic floor physical therapist that kind of specializes in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Oregon,
Mm.
Portland area, but we live in Germany right now. So that's kind of a fun fact about me is we've
Mhm.
actually lived in Germany for about 9 years.
Mm.
And that's just shy of the time that I've really had my FemFusion business. I've been doing FemFusion stuff for about 10 years. And I really started doing, I guess to back up a little bit, I went into physical therapy school and I graduated and as a doctor of physical therapy and started in geriatric physical therapy. So I
Mm.
was mostly in skilled nursing facilities and working with a different population that I just decided I wanted to shift focus. And so I ended up deciding to go to one of the loves I'd had during PT school, which was women's health. I actually did my final capstone project on pelvic pregnancy and the use of pregnancy support belts and that kind of thing. So
Mm.
I went back to that when I became pregnant myself because it was definitely heavy on my mind. And I wanted to, we always kind of try to, what is it? Like we work on what we're dealing with ourselves. And
Mhm.
so I went through the training, the coursework to become a specialist in women's health issues and pelvic floor issues. And I really, really enjoyed it. My favorite thing about working with women in this capacity and working with pelvic health was because so many women would come to me and they would say, I have no idea that there was help for this issue. So that's really kind of where I got into PT and women's health PT. was from my own pregnancy. And actually, I did have my own pelvic floor health issues. I did experience some prolapse after having my son. So that made it even easier for me to relate to my clients and have some empathy for them, compassion. So then I really got into FemFusion, which is the fitness and wellness business that I now do solely. And that was as a result of wanting to bring a little more creativity and fun into my work. I definitely had fun in the clinic, but I wanted to get a little more creative and think outside the box. So I started doing classes, group exercise classes in my local area. And I really fused kind of pelvic floor stuff into the workout. And I made them low impact, but really, really fun and safe for the pelvic floor and safe for women who may have issues with leaky bladder leakage or pelvic organ prolapse, things like that. So I made a combination of kind of dance and squats done in a really safe way and some work kind of at a ballet bar and work on the floor and stretches, and called it FemFusion Fitness. And that has since morphed into my YouTube channel and all the other things that I do online.
It really is an incredible channel. I first found you on there, and what a service you're providing to people, because like you said, I think that the whole birth process and the things that the female body goes through, not only through the pregnancy but then afterwards, and all the healing, um, and whether you've had a vaginal delivery or a cesarean, your body changes in so many ways, and there's a recovery period. And I had indicated on an earlier episode that I did have some injuries and that I was diagnosed with a stage 1 prolapse myself. And I felt really defeated in so many ways because I didn't know how I could manage it without it getting worse. What were these sensations that I was feeling? Was I going to hurt myself doing something? And so, I'm the the maven of Google. And not in a good way, because I'll diagnose myself. Yeah, I will diagnose myself with some pretty serious problems. So, but but I just started searching for, pelvic floor health and fitness and things like that, because, in the past I had been a runner. I really wasn't even interested in running. I just wanted to maintain some sort of level of physical activity. And that's when I discovered you, and you gave me a sense of hope that I really didn't feel prior to that. And you made it so fun, and you're so inviting and welcoming, and you always have a smile on your face, and you make it seem like, that we're going to be okay, that this isn't like a serious, terrible issue that we can go through. And so many women experience different things. So you might not have prolapse like I have, but you may have some other conditions that we're going to talk about in this interview. But I just really want to commend you for putting yourself out there and for providing this service to women. And the videos are for free. She has so many videos on her channel for free. Now, I did subscribe to a few. Uh, in fact, one of them that I really like is the glute camp, and that's a way to safely strengthen your lower body in a way that's not going to be, like you mentioned, it's not high impact. It's not going to do anything that will compromise a prolapse if you had that. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you do have hundreds of amazing videos. And I just wanted you to tell us a little bit more about your channel. Maybe you talk about some of the videos or playlists that you have and who those are primarily geared towards.
Yeah. Okay. That's wonderful. I love talking about my YouTube channel because I'm really excited about it. It's my goal is to make pelvic health information really accessible for everybody and globally, because I am not able to provide medical advice or, individualized advice by way of YouTube. But I just think it's important because a lot of people, I always say, please go see a women's health physical therapist in your area, but not everybody has access to that. And so, women's health physical therapy itself is it's a fairly new field, and there still aren't as many certified, therapists who are qualified to do pelvic floor physical therapy. And so a lot of even physical therapists won't talk about the pelvic floor, really address the pelvic floor in the general practice. And so that's kind of why I wanted to really talk about pelvic health stuff on YouTube. And the exercises in the videos, they're primarily geared toward women, although men can certainly watch and learn from my channel as well, but definitely geared toward women with pelvic health issues such as bladder leakage or prolapse. And these may seem like kind of obscure things, but actually there's different numbers that we can get, anywhere between 1 in 3 women, or even as many as 50% of women, especially when you get over a certain age, over about 50, as many as 50% of women have issues with bladder leakage. And sadly, there's statistics that show anywhere between 60 to 72% I've seen of these women with bladder leakage issues don't talk to their doctor about it. They just sort of live with it. And prolapse is kind of a hanging low, is how I easily describe it. It's a hanging low of your pelvic organs. And that is something that up to 50% of women who've had kids, who've, parous women, so women who've been pregnant and had a baby, deal with. And it may reverse itself. It may actually, the symptoms may reverse. You may not even really notice it, but it's actually a very common condition as well. So the point of my channel is, it's to work out in a way that's hopefully not going to aggravate people who have those conditions. And not every video is going to be completely appropriate for everyone, but for the most part, you can feel safe kind of coming to my channel and knowing that I'm going to tell you to engage the pelvic floor first before we do our ab work. And we're going to talk about proper breathing and proper posture and proper technique.
Mm-hmm. And safe is the word that made me feel so comfortable too, because there are millions of videos and different kinds of exercise and things on YouTube, and you hear one person say, well, yoga is a safe and gentle exercise. Well, it wasn't feeling safe and gentle for me in certain positions. But knowing that you had a background, not just in exercise, but the anatomy of the female body, and having gone through it yourself, made me feel so much more comfortable that I could trust you, and that, like you said, maybe not every exercise is geared toward that, but you helped me understand what I needed to do, to prep for, let's say, a squat that we were doing, or lifting in a certain way, or standing in a certain position. So engaging, like you said, that core and pelvic floor in a way that then I could gauge for myself. Does this feel good? And if not, then I'll skip this exercise. But if it does, and I'm engaging the right way, then I know that I'm strengthening my body. So I think just the way that you present, because throughout the videos, you're not just saying, let's do this move and showing us, you're talking through it, the whole thing, and explaining, what this is doing, and how you should be, pulling your core in, or doing a Kegel for this part of the exercise. And that is just so effective. And, from an outsider standpoint, some of the moves look like you're not doing anything, but you can really feel those muscles engaging on the inside, which is what we need to help strengthen. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah, if you don't mind me kind of inserting this, I love that you said what you just said, because that's my real goal there, is that people will be able to take the information and apply it to any exercise they may do in their life. And I really think that this is the blessing of having pelvic health issues, and having people come to my channel, or anyone who has a similar channel to what I do, is that really, I heard this quote once and I love it. It's basically, are you going to let this be a blessing or a burden? So anything in our life, any challenge that we may have, are you going to let this be a blessing or a burden? And I think that pelvic health issues can actually be a big blessing, because they do often lead people like you to channels and information like mine. And just think of how much you've learned about your body, and how much you've learned to tune in and really connect. And then now you're able to apply that intuition and that connection to all areas of your life. and
Mm-hmm.
your other exercises that you do, and your, fitness classes you go to at the gym, or your running or walking you do outside.
Yeah, that's 100% true because, I have I'm such an old school kind of person, but I do have some exercise DVDs, which probably is telling of my age. But I have found that I can pull some of those out again, and rather than being scared, I know how to modify them, or I know
Yes.
how to set them up, or I know which ones just need to skip because they're not great for me. But you have taught me in that way, how to listen to my body better,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
guess. Um, so, we're talking about, those of us with issues, but and I'm beginning to understand that pelvic floor and core strength is important for everybody. Even if
Mhm.
you don't currently have an issue, maybe you haven't had children, or you were a lucky one that did have children and don't have issues. But we all know as we age, sometimes our muscles atrophy a little bit, and there may be things that happen down the road. And even if we're not worried about that, why should we be concerned right now with our pelvic floor and core strength?
Well, there's so many reasons for right now, like in this moment now, that it can be helpful. And one of them is strengthening and kind of being aware and in tune with that part of our body is, first of all, important for great balance, for good posture, for good alignment. There is also, evidence that it is very, very helpful for sexual relations and for helping with sensation and responsiveness in that part of your life. So that's kind of a nice in the moment issue. But as far as, I think sometimes that can be more fun to think about than preventing things that may come down the road. So if you're someone who doesn't currently experience, bladder leakage or prolapse or that kind of thing, then wonderful. You can think about the amazing in the moment issues of, hey, it's going to potentially help my romantic life and, help with my posture and my balance, help me have a more effective, well-rounded, really awesome core workout, help with
Mhm.
back pain. All of that can be reasons where in the now it can help us. But it's so important to actually think about the future and to think about, like you said, as we get older, it is harder to gain strength, and it is easier for the muscles to atrophy. And so as we can develop healthy habits now, it's going to help protect us as we get older. Having that great core strength is going to keep our balance, and it's going to protect us from falls. It's going to protect us from the sad statistic that most people who actually end up in long-term care facilities as they get older, it's because they can no longer live independently because of incontinence issues and
Mm,
toileting issues. That's a
mm,
huge reason why people are admitted to long-term care facilities when they
mm,
are elderly. So it really is a basic function of life is our pelvic health. And,
mhm.
it's really important to think about it for not just reasons in the now, but also in the future as well.
It's really interesting. I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't think about that toileting issues. And you mentioned that
Yeah.
probably the two major things I would think of, toileting issues and then falls,
Yep.
because how many women do you hear, whether their bone density is lacking and they fall because of a fracture.
Mhm.
They always say that your bone fractures first and then you fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or it can happen, but either way.
Mhm.
But I've heard that statistic, that a large majority of people who are in long-term care facilities also have been there from a fall. My
Yep.
grandmother was one.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes, after you're of a certain age, whether your bones don't heal correctly, but that may be where you're spending your final days because of that
Mhm.
that fall. So these are all really important things to remember.
Well, and very interconnected as well, because of what we were just talking about, those two factors is that a lot of people, when I was working in the skilled nursing facility setting, they would, let's just say, have a fall, or they'd have some kind of severe sickness or surgery or something like that, but often a fall that would lead them to needing a surgery or just having periods of prolonged bed rest, not able to move the way they wanted to. And what would happen is they would become incontinent
Mm,
because they couldn't move. The mobility was hampered. And so then they became incontinent because it was just too challenging to get to the bathroom. And then once they were in the incontinence protection items, it was it's really hard. Like once you have kind of allowed that into your life, it's hard to get back, to get out of that
Yes.
zone. And so it really is kind of this cycle. And sometimes one leads to the other.
Mm. It's really, it's a sad thing that can happen.
Hmm.
And um, so I just, even thinking about, like we said, future generations or, passing along this information, I think about, I have boys, but just like you said, this can pertain to women and men, and there are
Hmm.
certainly men that have incontinence issues as well.
Hmm.
So just having this information, I think of my grandmother, like I mentioned, who was
Hmm.
in a nursing home due to a fall, and I'm sure it had incontinence afterwards too. But just seeing that firsthand and how sad that was, and I would like to prevent that for myself and as well as for my children too. So this is such a relevant and very important topic that I
Hmm.
don't think we think about too often.
Hmm.
One quote that I've heard you say, Dr. Bree, is that you have said that common shouldn't necessarily be viewed as normal. Can you explain that a little bit further in regard to pelvic health?
Yeah, exactly. So these issues, as I've mentioned, are very common. I
Mhm.
gave those statistics earlier. Anywhere from a third to even 50% of women have the bladder leakage, and similar numbers with prolapse. Really, so they're common and they're typical. And things that happen, like peeing a little bit when you jump on the trampoline, or peeing when you sneeze, or peeing when you're lifting weights. A lot of CrossFitters, I don't mean to pick on a certain type of exercise, but it's just
Mhm.
been out in the media that a lot of CrossFitters will have accidents, and people just kind of laugh it off. And while it's good to not feel shame or horrible embarrassment, and closet yourself away and not talk about it, and oh my gosh, I'm
Mhm.
never going to exercise again. It's good that we're have some dialogue about it. But I think that just laughing it off and saying, well, it's just what happens as we get older, or this is just what happens after we have babies, is not necessarily the right approach, because there are things that can be done with it about it. And even though it's common and typical, it doesn't have to be your new normal. You can at least try some conservative, pretty easy approaches to help make things better.
Now, we'd like to take a minute to give a shout out to our show partners, Perfect Supplements and Amazon. Perfect Supplements is a family owned and operated business that supports local farms. Their superfoods and supplements are non GMO, third party tested for purity, and contain no synthetic ingredients, colors, or flavors. They're also organic or wild harvested and fairly traded. Products range from collagen and bone broth powders to plant proteins, greens, desiccated liver, and adaptogenic herbs. Perfect also carries vitamins and supplements from other reputable sources, like Just Thrive, Dr. Mercola, Gaia Herbs, Green Pastures, Garden of Life, and Prescript Assist. To check out their wide array of products, go to perfectsupplements.com/Kim. If you use coupon code KIM10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. This is a great way to get superfood nutrition while helping to support our podcast. And just as a disclaimer, it's not the intention of our podcast to provide specific medical advice, but rather to provide you with information to better understand the role of dietary supplements in health. We urge you to consult with a qualified health provider to discuss both the advantages and risks of using dietary supplements. Our other show partner, Amazon, is the largest online warehouse and carries just about everything you need. If you shop on Amazon, which is likely, you can support our show at the same time at no additional cost to you. Simply use our affiliate link to enter the site, then browse and buy, just as you normally would. A Whole New You podcast will make a small commission from your purchase, which helps to support production costs for the show. You can find a clickable Amazon link in the show notes for this episode. You can also go to the products page of our website, awholenewyouPodcast.com, to find the link. If you love our show and appreciate the free information you get each week, please consider buying from Perfect or using our affiliate link when making purchases on Amazon. Now let's get back to the show. And one of the things that I've tried that you have a lift series on your channel which has made all the difference for me. And they're very simple steps. And it, if you're someone who's, used to working out a lot, and you're doing these sort of, like, it starts off, with a lot of exercises lying on your back and propping your hips up. It appears like, how could this be helpful? But it really, let me tell
Yeah.
you, it is.
Yeah.
It is. It helps everything. So, I think that, as you mentioned, having this dialogue is really important. But and it is funny, I guess, sometimes when people talk about, oh, I peed, I pee every time I laugh or every time I sneeze, and it is funny, but really, is it? Because you don't really want to be. Who wants to be dealing with that issue? And just because your friends have gone through it or you're going through it yourself, doesn't mean, like you mentioned, Dr. Bree, we shouldn't at least try to help reverse it. Because there are periods in my life, and I've heard you say that prolapse can kind of like come and go, like the sensations that we're having. I reached out to you recently because I had moved and was lifting heavy boxes and felt that sensation of prolapse, and what have I done, and I just returned to the lift program, and it just, it's 5 weeks. You do the same exercise every day for a week, and then move on to the week 2. And it makes a world of difference. And it's something simple that you can do. So, this leads me to my next question, though. So if someone has prolapse, is maybe leaking urine, as we mentioned, or even has diastasis recti, that separation of the abdominal muscles that sometimes women get after having children, where should they start? What sort of lifestyle changes or accommodations would you recommend for them?
Oh, yeah, that is such a great question. And it's a pretty big question because there's lots of places they could start. But I think honestly, the best place is, well, I guess it's important for me to kind of give this caveat or disclaimer that, I definitely see a women's health physical therapist if that is available to you in your area. A women's health physical therapist is really trained to help and really diagnose exactly what's going on with you, because there are some real things to consider. One of the main things is the person, because we're going to look at the core, is what we're really going to be training with all of those conditions: prolapse, diastasis recti, bladder leakage, all of that. We're going to be working on the entire core. So the pelvic floor, the abs, the back, the breathing diaphragm, all of this, and the hips, all of that's, part of the musculoskeletal piece of what we're looking into. There are lifestyle things that I'll mention in just a moment. But one thing that we need to make sure the person knows how to do is how to identify the pelvic floor muscles correctly. And some people really have a hard time with that if they're not seeing a physical therapist one-on-one or someone who can really help them tune in. So that's kind of the first piece, is if you have access to a PT, that is a great place to start. If you don't have access, then at least try to begin by isolating the pelvic floor and seeing if you can kind of feel those muscles that sit at the base of the pelvis. They're the muscles that you contract when you hold in urine or when you hold in gas. So they surround the openings, the vaginal opening, the anal opening, they surround those openings. So see if you can kind of isolate and feel those muscles gently squeezing and lifting. It should definitely feel like a drawing in and up, and not a pushing down, which is actually fairly common, that sometimes women don't quite know how to do that drawing in and up feeling. There might be more of a feeling of kind of bearing down. And that can partially be due to we get so used to using our abs and our upper abs in various workouts that we do that we over recruit our abdominal muscles, and it kind of ends up pushing down because our pelvic floor muscles are not very strong in there, and we're not very aware. And there sometimes can be nerve damage, and there can be other issues that might happen after childbirth. So I'd say that a real good first step, musculoskeletal wise, is to just make sure that you can tune into that base of your core, which would be the pelvic floor. And I do talk about this in my lift series. We also want to make sure that you can just as easily relax the muscles. So in order to really strengthen any muscle, you have to be able to contract it and you have to be able to relax it. Because you would never walk around all day with your biceps, biceps curl full on hanging up in the air like your Arnold Schwarzenegger look, without being able to release those arms straight and then curl again. So the only way to get strong is to have both the contraction and the relaxation. So that's really step one, is to make sure you can get that part figured out. There's so much beyond that, but I'll just keep that basic. And then lifestyle wise, oh my goodness, probably one of the most important things is to make sure your posture is great. It's kind of like, posture and rant, rant, rant. Like that's so boring sounding, but it is true that if you're living life with a forward head, which many of us do, because we are on our computers and we're on our phones and all of that, our posture really starts, whether you want to think about it one way or the other, our posture starts at our feet and it starts at our head. Either way, our body is just a big chain. We have to have, a head that's not jutting forward. We need to have our head back so it's in line over our shoulders and the rest of our body. We want to have everything in a nice line. We don't want our ribs to be jutting forward and popping up. If your breasts are kind of like jutting up toward the sky, like I wish we had video right now, but if they're kind of like jutting upwards, that might mean that you're a rib thruster, which is actually going to pull your whole core out of alignment. So we need to kind of pull in our lower ribs a bit there, which is going to help automatically engage the core really nicely, so that you don't have to be like, we certainly don't want you clenching and consciously super active and on with your core all day, but you need to be in a good alignment so that your core can fire really well, just at the baseline level it's supposed to fire at to keep you upright. So the ribs need to be in. Of course, your shoulders need to be nice and wide, not rounded, which is very common, very rounded shoulders. So we might need to stretch out the chest a little bit. That can be real tight. We need to make sure that our low back is not overly swayed or overly arched, but also that your butt's not tucked under. So there can be kind of two extremes there, an anterior or a posterior pelvic tilt. And we really want a nice neutral spine. If you have all that going on, and then, good foot position and leg position, then your core is automatically in a really beautiful place for firing quickly and easily when it's needed, a little extra, and just that baseline general low level of firing that it's always doing to keep you up. The other thing that it does is helps manage pressure in the abdominal area. Especially if you're slouchy, which is so easy to happen when we're sitting, if you're slouching down or kind of hunching forward, that puts a lot of downward pressure on your pelvic organs. And that can lead to issues over time, such as prolapse. So posture is really important, and managing that intra-abdominal pressure, which there's also some techniques with breathing correctly when you're doing exercises, when you're lifting. Pretty much if you just remember exhale with exertion, that's really going to help you manage your intra-abdominal pressure.
I am taking notes.
I that was a lot just there. So
No, but it's so important. One of the things that I never in my life connected before, I tend to have terrible posture, and it has to be a conscious decision on my part to stand correctly. But what I do notice, and you've taught me this truthfully, and it's from watching your videos, is that it is amazing that I do feel less pelvic floor pressure when I'm standing correctly, when I do have my shoulders back and my head isn't jutting forward, because that is like, I feel like that's my default posture, is to hunch, and it's not good. And I do feel a relief. And so, and we have to be careful as we age too, we as women, especially if we're losing any kind of bone density, to have that like sort of like dowager's hump sort of, and that just kind of creates that, that pressure even more, which I think, pertains to elderly women. I'm thinking of the natural pressure that may be forced on their pelvic floor, from, having osteoporotic conditions. But nevertheless, just like you said, even the way we're sitting, the way we're standing. And I've even seen you in some videos talking about ways to sit on the toilet correctly.
Yes.
So that we are eliminating in the right way, which is
Yeah.
important for people, especially if you have a prolapse, but
Mm-hmm.
just using something like a squatty potty or making sure that you're not hunching,
Mm-hmm.
because that's putting a lot of pressure, on that area too. And it really does. And I would encourage our listeners, if you have a moment just to stand up, if you're not driving in your car right now, or even if you're sitting, just to pull your shoulders back and lift your head. Because as Dr. Bree was mentioning that, I'm staring down at my computer and my head
Mm-hmm.
is very jutted forward.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of pull that back and get yourself into an alignment. And there is sort of a relief on your body when you can be in that good posture position. And it really is all interconnected. And that's something that I don't think that we think about. I never thought about it before.
Mm-mm.
But it really
Well, and
does.
what it is it's the things that we do all day long repeatedly are the things that give us the problems. And,
Mm,
we can do an exercise routine for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, but then we have the rest of our day that
yeah.
is adding up on us. And that's really what I want to kind of get at people is that, like my lift series, it's, there's some exercises and they're great. But the main piece is the lifestyle
Mhm.
stuff, is
Yeah.
how you're moving throughout the day, how your posture is throughout the day, how you're
Yeah.
lifting, all of that.
Yeah, and you do have those tips. I've printed off the worksheets that come with that, and you do have the
Mhm,
lifestyle tips at the bottom underneath
mhm,
the exercises, which
mhm.
is important. So that and you mentioned a few things already, but if given that every case is different, every person may be dealing with a different issue, can you give us an idea of some basic modifications that we can use during exercise? If you're having pelvic floor or core issues, or maybe even if you're not, some things to remember to do when you're exercising.
Yeah, I think I think one thing that one good example here is probably a curl, like a
Hmm.
crunch,
Hmm.
which I want to give the little caveat again that a crunch is maybe not, it's not necessarily the be all end all abdominal move. In fact, I rarely use crunches
Hmm.
or sit ups or anything like that in my exercises that I do on YouTube. However, they are done in a lot of exercise classes. And so I would say the first thing there is you need to remember that pelvic floor first concept. So when you are getting to the point of your, let's just say your ab routine where you're going to do some crunches, if you're going to do them, then you need to start by engaging your pelvic floor, doing that gentle squeeze and lift, that in and up feeling, that kind of gathering in and up feeling of your pelvic muscle, your pelvic floor muscles, and
Hmm.
hold it. And then you want to engage your low abs. And they're naturally going to engage a little bit when your pelvic floor does, just because they're very connected in that area. But the muscles that you feel, your ab muscles that you feel when you kind of go shh like that, the sh sound, when you do that, you can feel those ab muscles kind of turn on. It's right above your pubic bone area, right at the very, very low part, almost like if you were wearing super, super, super low waisted jeans,
Hmm.
that area down there. So that's what we really want to turn on and lift up and pull in all those sensations, like we're zipping on those skinny jeans.
Hmm.
And then you want to keep that engagement, but especially focusing on that pelvic floor first. And then when you're doing that crunch, do an exhale, a breathe out as you crunch. That's really going to help with so many of these issues. Now, again, crunches may not be right for you if you have
Hmm.
diastasis recti or prolapse or anything like that. But I'm just it's just a basic move that so many
Hmm.
exercise programs still do. So I think that's a good one to kind of start with and tune in with. Um, Another one is squatting. It's
Hmm.
really important when you are squatting to make sure that you're not tucking your bum under when you squat down. A lot of people do, a lot of women especially, because of some differences in our muscular strength of our quads and our just the way we're built. It can be easy for our knees to kind of come together, not to kind of fall in a little bit when we squat. It can also be easy for us to not stick our butt out because we're kind of, I don't know, it's like we all don't want to. We don't want our bum to be really sticking back there. But it's important to sit back when you squat, to not tuck your butt under, because when you do tuck your butt under, you're hunching, and that's putting your pelvis in a funny position that things could easily kind of slip out. And
Hmm.
it's also not engaging the glutes in the right way and the back in the right way. And it's also probably putting your knees over in a bad position for your knee health as well. So for many reasons, it's important to sit back and keep your chest lifted. You don't want a sway back or an arch in your low back so much, but we want length in the spine and to sit back. And in that squat, what I like to do is at the bottom of the squat. So when you're squatting, it's funny, I'm doing it right now. I'm a very kinesthetic learner, so I have to like move and talk. But I'm doing my squat. My bum is back. And at the bottom of the squat, I'm going to engage my pelvic floor. And I'm going to exhale as I come up to stand and squeeze my butt at the same time. So it's doing things very intentionally, which at first it might feel, maybe you do this normally, maybe that's naturally how you do it, but a lot of people don't. They kind of don't stick their butt back. They hunch a little bit, maybe without thinking about it. Their butt tucks under because of some flexibility and strength issues, or just, again, lack of awareness. And their knees fall in. So if you just focus on these little basic things, it's going to make your squat safer all around and actually a lot more effective. And especially that breathing piece. Exhale with exertion.
Mm-hmm. You had shared with me a video, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it was like, it was squatting safely. And you had shared it with me because I had mentioned that I had moved and was lifting these heavy boxes. And one of the examples you gave was that, like you were talking about skinny jeans, pull that area in as if you were zipping up your skinny jeans and you had no underwear on, and you
exactly.
and you hadn't shaved that area, and you're trying not to get it stuck in the zipper. But that was so, it was funny, but I needed that
Yeah.
like visual to know that, oh yeah, I really, and that does make a difference. And that's what you're describing right here anyway.
Exactly.
That you're pulling that in. And it makes a big difference. And so that you're pulling that in and breathing out when you stand up, it sure helps me. And I think that that's something that, I think when people say, okay, I'm going to squat, and they just do it, and they don't think about the breathing, and maybe they're sticking their, bum backwards, but maybe they're not. And so there is a technique and there's a reason behind them, because you certainly don't want to be forcing too much pressure, especially if you're lifting weights. And we're just talking about like, air squats even. But if people are doing those, back squats and lifting really heavy weight, I've read articles about, you mentioned CrossFit before, about people who have had a prolapse because of that, because of the way that they're lifting with really heavy weights and maybe not having the best mechanics. So it's really important to remember those things. Before we kind of get to the end here, I had one more question for you, but just out of curiosity, how many videos do you have on your channel?
Oh my gosh, it's almost embarrassing to say. I think I have like 500 almost.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. I've been, at first when I first started throwing them up on YouTube, 10 years ago, I just literally, I didn't even really know. I think my very first video was for a girlfriend of mine who'd had a baby. And I just sort of threw it up there as a way to share it with her. And then, here and there, I just sort of put something up. And it's only within the last couple of years that they've gotten more, a little more, they're still not professionally produced. I record them on my iPhone and edit them together myself, but it's, a lot better than they used to be.
Well, you would never know that because they are very professional, and you have music and graphics, and no, they're really good. But the reason I didn't want to put you on the spot there, but the reason I ask is just because you offer such a variety of different kinds of exercises. You have things, you have an ab camp, you have a lift series that I mentioned, you have a subscription that is a glute camp, but you have so many free videos on everything from interviews with other professionals to nutrition, to various things, upper body, lower body. You have something called Foga. Can you explain what Foga is?
Oh, I love Foga. Foga is one of my favorites. It's fitness and yoga combined. So it's going to give you a great stretch. There's going to be a bit of a kind of like a flow, like a vinyasa flow feel. I am a certified yoga teacher, but I involve a little bit more kind of fitnessy stuff. So it depends on the workout, but it's going to leave you with maybe a little more of a workout feel than a yoga class that's more focused on regular yoga stuff. So yeah, it's really fun. And actually a good way for people to access all my playlists at once, because it can actually be hard to find them all, like every single playlist I have.
Mhm.
So there's a bit.ly, so bit.ly/fem playlists. It has an S on the end. When I was making the bit.ly, I didn't know that certain things were like, unfortunately, I made it so that the F was capitalized. So
Oh,
it's capital
okay.
FEM, and then playlists with a capital P
Okay.
and an S on the end.
Okay.
So I made it far too complicated for a bit.ly. I didn't know what I was doing, but that's a really easy way to get to all of my playlists at once.
Good. And I will have that in the show notes for our listeners so that they can find that easily. But
Perfect.
I just think it's you cater to everybody on your channel, and people
Yeah.
can create home workouts,
Hmm.
um, just from your playlist. And it's not just for people who have prolapse or
Yeah.
issues. I mean, you can certainly have a complete list and change it up all the time. You have so
Hmm.
many,
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
different workouts that people could do at home too. So
Yeah.
um, so just sort of like in wrapping things up, what are some key things that you think that we can all do, what we all need to remember for our pelvic floor, especially as we age? Can you give us like maybe a top couple of things that we need to remember?
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, first thing, I think the first one is tuning in. Just
Mhm.
tune in to your core, tune into this part of your body you may not have ever even thought about it before. If you're listening this far into the interview, either you totally have thought about it before and you totally know a lot of this stuff, or you're intrigued. You're like, wow, it's never something I really thought about. So tuning into that part of your body, see if you know how to do a Kegel, a little contraction and a release. By the way, it is kind of funny that that exercise is named after a male who was Dr.
Um,
Arnold Kegel. So we have to kind of wonder about that. But so
yes.
anyway, just tuning in and getting in touch with that part of your body for so many reasons. Lifting correctly is another huge one for me that I just think is so important. And I do have a video about how to lift. It's a lot of what we've already talked about. Just you want to be sure you've got good form, that you're not hunching, that you are exhaling as you lift, engaging the pelvic floor first, all of that information there. But lifting is something we all do, even if it's just going down to pick up a pen off the floor that we dropped. You're still transitioning to a standing position and you're lifting up that pen. So you need to learn how to do that right.
Mm.
And I think the other top thing is one of my tagline at the end of most of my videos. I say, eat clean, move every day, shine brighter. And the nutrition is a huge piece of things, and hydration, watering our body, feeding our body correctly, and also just moving our body. We've been talking a little bit in a group that I'm in about fascia and how it's connected throughout our entire body. The fascial network it connects everything. So really anything that we do, from again the way we hold our head to the way we have our feet, is going to affect everything else in our body. And one reason is this network of connective tissue that's in and around every single piece and part of our innards in our body. And this network of fascia is completely it's fluid filled. And so these little pieces of fascia, you can see the fluid moving in them. And it's important to stay hydrated to do that as we age and throughout our life. Stay hydrated, drink plenty of water, eat plenty of fluid rich vegetables and fruits, but also movement. Movement actually keeps that fluid moving well in our tissues and our fascia and our other connective tissues. So motion is lotion is what I learned
Mm.
in PT school. And I love that concept. Motion is lotion. You've got to keep moving every single day to prevent a lot of the aches and pains and stiffness that we think of as just, what has to happen as we get older. It's
That's
really important. Yeah.
That's so interesting because I don't think we think about that, and I don't think that we
No.
think that we're, like, lubricating, our joints and our fascia in that way by movement, but it is so true. I mean, just think about, like, when you're sitting for a long period of time and you go to stand up and you're achy, like your
Yes.
joints aren't moving the right way, but,
Hmm.
if that becomes a sedentary lifestyle, what that's really doing to our bodies, so
Hmm. Yeah, we just think of it as losing muscle tissue or muscle atrophy, but there's more to it. There's also that connective tissue that's a huge piece of our comfort and our connectivity between all of our parts of our body. So yeah, motion is lotion. Just remember that.
I love that. I'm writing it down. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I cannot tell you how appreciative I am for you to be talking to me. You're in Germany and I'm in Indiana. Technology is great in that way, but I just think that you have such a revolutionary outlook that I think that this is just such a gift that you're giving to people. And I'm so happy to be spreading the word. And I'm hoping that we're going to turn a lot of people onto your channel. So if people wanted to connect with you and follow you, what's the best way to find you?
Oh, well, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And the best place to find me is just FemFusion Fitness. It's actually pretty consistent that that's
Mhm.
my handle and that kind of thing. I have a
Okay.
website, femfusionfitness.com. I am FemFusion Fitness on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you are a YouTube watcher. If you just subscribe to my channel and then hit the little bell that allows you to get notifications. I usually put out a new video every week. I'm pretty committed to that. And also, Instagram and Facebook is also FemFusion Fitness.
That's easy to remember.
Yeah, I
Well,
think Pinterest, I'm just FemFusion though, if I remember right. But I'm not really that active on Pinterest. So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's the platform that we all think we should probably be active on,
Yeah.
but we're not.
Yeah.
Myself included. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, Dr. Brianne, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for helping to spread the word about pelvic floor health. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.
That's it for today. For more from Kim, you can go to kimmaravich.com. For more from Lori, go to simplympoweredllc.com. We're always open to listener questions or suggestions for the show. You can email those to contact@awholenewyou.podcast.com. We'd also love it if you joined our Facebook community and followed us on Instagram. Just search for A Whole New You Podcast. And lastly, if you'd be so kind as to leave us a rating and review in iTunes, we would really appreciate that so more people can find our show and join our community. We'll see you next week.